Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome you to the community meeting for the development of the Coyote Management Plan. I would like to remind you that we are broadcasting live on YouTube. If you have any questions at any point after we've done our presentations, we will be allowing for question and answer. So those of you who are filling out cards, you can deliver them anytime that you'd like, but we will have an open question and answer session. Tonight I am joined by the Los Angeles County Department of Agricultural Weights and Measures, and I have Jim Hartman who will be giving a presentation.
I'm on. Cool. Good afternoon. I've been up since 4. I get to work at 4 o'clock in the morning, so it's been a long day for me. My name is Jim Hartman. I'm a 32-year veteran of the Los Angeles County Agriculture Commissioner Weights and Measures Department. I head up the Integrated Pest Management Division, where I'm a Deputy Agriculture Commissioner Sealer. And I've been in this position for about 5 years, heading this particular division. And coyote management falls under my division. We also do a lot of vegetation management and other things, but coyotes happens to be the bane of my existence. Okay, here we go. That's a clicker. So, coyotes have been around for a long time. Our friends at Rancho La Brea tar pits tell me that the oldest specimen they have is 46,800 years. It's the 3rd most common mammal found in the tar pits, after dire wolves and smilodons, or saber-toothed cats. So they've been around for a very, very long time. So they're not new to our area whatsoever. Coyotes' diets vary. They like small rodents, rabbits, raccoons, berries, birds, fruits, vegetables, garbage, compost, outdoor pet food, and unfortunately small unprotected pets. They're pretty much omnivores. They're predators of opportunity. They weigh in between around anywhere, the lightest size about 15 to 40. Generally, we see them about 24, 25 pounds in general. They're about half the size of a large German Shepherd. So, if you see something much larger than, let's say, a Great Dane out there, it's probably a bear or something that you don't want to find out there. The young are born in mid to late spring, which is when we start hearing a lot of phone calls from folks because, the adults are out foraging, trying to provide for their young. Litters are anywhere from 4 to 7 pups, and the young stay with their parents up until late summer. About this time, they start dispersing their young, which is another uptick that we find in a lot of complaints, because now you've got young coyotes that are out there trying to reestablish their territories, and they're looking, of course, for the easiest prey possible, which is, unfortunately, usually our pets. This is a sighting map that was put together by University of California for me a couple of years ago at the Vertebrate Pest Conference. This shows from 2007-2015 the number of calls per city that we receive every year. And these are in areas where you would expect them to be. Obviously, the city of Los Angeles takes up a huge part of this because of the varied areas of habitat they have. Plus, if you look in certain areas, if you're familiar with Los Angeles County, down toward Orange County, Diamond Bar, the city of West Covina, we have this interface here not far from the mountains that makes this ideal habitat. Coyotes are most active between dusk and dawn, but however, because they've become so accustomed to being around us, they can be active almost any time during the day, and it's not unusual to see them during the day. Again, they don't have anything to fear from us. Their natural predators are mountain lions and cars. So they don't see us as any kind of a threat to them unless we, try to reinforce that in them, which we suggest that we do. Coyotes generally are pretty shy by nature. However, they are extremely curious, and they often can be seen observing us just like we're observing them, from what they consider to be a safe distance. And that doesn't mean that if the coyote doesn't necessarily run immediately away from you when you take a look at them, it doesn't mean that they're aggressive. It's just they're curious. They see this large creature out there that's occupying their habitat, and unfortunately, they're probably thinking that, hey, I wonder if they're going to feed me. Because again, these animals, we've conditioned them to associate food with us. And we provide, unfortunately, sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally, great opportunities to do that. Now, coyotes aren't coming out of the wilderness, being driven out by hunger or fires. There may be a certain amount of pressure when you have a fire that runs through or the recent drought, but coyotes are living in amongst us. What you're looking at here on this slide, this is in the city of La Mirada, in the middle of the flats out there in a homeowners association, and you can see that we had coyotes living right in the middle of the city there because we provide everything for them. They have all the food, shelter, water, and the space for them. You know, it's very, very conducive to them. There's a reason why their cousins 15,000 years ago became the domestic dog that we enjoy today. These guys are still, these are canids. They can tolerate our presence very, very well. One of the problems that we have is, of course, intentional feeding. I don't understand how folks don't understand that nature provides for these things, and sometimes nature can be very cruel. Not everything that is in nature will survive and will have a happy, happy life like they have in Walt Disney. Things, unfortunately, starve, they get diseases, they die. But folks, unfortunately, think that nature needs a hand, so they put out things like this out in Agua Dulce, which was for the coyotes out that way. Again, this was over in the South Bay. It was either left for the dog food was either left for feral cats, which is another problem, or for the coyotes themselves. I'm going to say that it's probably for the coyotes because you can see where it's going underneath the fence there. Obviously, coyotes have dug underneath there and they're taking that. The steak and the hot dogs there was in an area up in Altadena where we were having multiple problems with pet takes. And we went out there to take a look to see what was going on, and somebody within the last half hour had left this nice 3/4-inch steak out there on a plate for the coyotes. Can't get their food dirty, you know. But as one of my inspectors said, he says, all I get is salad from my wife. I don't, I don't eat this good. Anyway, so the thing is that, we can't allow ourselves, and it is in fact illegal, and I'll talk about that under Title 10 to feed non-mammalian predators. But the thing is, the other problem with feeding like this is that even if it isn't the coyotes directly coming in here, you're bringing in what they consider prey. So you're bringing in rats and raccoons and possums and feral cats and other people's cats and other people's dogs. And these are things that coyotes, again, because they're predators of opportunity, find to be very, very tasty and something that's easy for them to acquire. So there's also unintentional feeding. Bird baths are nice, but obviously our friend here is getting a nice drink out of this. To be honest with you, I don't know why anybody would feed birds. Again, nature provides for itself. And if you ever really want to get a sense for these sorts of things, Google rats on bird feeders and see how many. Yeah, again, these are our Norway, roof rats that came in. If you're going to feed birds, do it during the day, take them in at night, because, again, rodents like this are only going to come out at night unless they're under huge populations. Generally, if you know anything about rats, rats are nocturnal creatures. If you see rats like this out during the day, you have a tremendous population of rats. But that's a different story. But again, it brings these predators, these food species out to the coyotes. Also, I love chickens. I had chickens when I was a kid. I grew up here in West Covina when you used to be able to do that. So it's nice, but again, this is a great opportunity, particularly if you don't harden those areas from coyotes to prevent them from digging underneath, that it's an attractive nuisance for them. If nothing else, it brings them in. Fruit being allowed to sit down on the ground and fall on the ground. I don't think citrus is one of their favorite things, but a mojito every now and again, I don't think a coyote is going to turn that up. The other thing is, too, that illustrates here, allowing that skirt, or in citrus, that's that bottom foliage, all the way allowing it down to the ground. It leaves a nice opportunity for them to just lay up during the day and hide out and be cool and wait for your cat to walk down that driveway to take it out. So it's usually a good idea for a number of good reasons to lift those skirts or prune those bushes up, and of course to harvest the fruit. If you don't use it themselves, I know there's a lot of food banks out there that will volunteer and come out and take that from from you or for you. Like I say, it's nature's bounty, and if you're not going to use it, please don't let the coyotes use it. So under Los Angeles County Code, Title 10, which is what our Animal Regulation Department functions under, except otherwise provided herein, no person shall feed or in any manner provide food to a non-domesticated rodent or non-domesticated mammalian predator. And for the purposes of this chapter, rodent includes the ground squirrel, and then mammalian predators includes coyotes, raccoons, foxes, and possums. Now, most cities have adopted Title 10. Some cities have actually expanded Title 10 I think it's in Rolling Hills Estates. They actually include peacocks and all kinds of other things that included. So cities can do additional things to this, but this is the minimum that folks adopt when they buy into this. So it is illegal. Now, it's a misdemeanor, and our animal care and control folks don't have the time to go out and knock on every door when somebody's out there looking for things. So it isn't like they're not trying to do their job. It's just that with the amount of cats and dogs that are out there and all the other issues they have out there, it's very difficult to be able to regulate this. Plus, again, because it's a misdemeanor, it has to be done in their presence. So it's very difficult for them, unless somebody actually is taking out that 55-gallon, drum of food out there and pouring it out there and having the coyotes come in, for them to be able to prove necessarily that there is somebody actually breaking the law and doing it. I have heard of a case not too long ago after the fires in Griffith Park, where a guy would pull up and would throw Subway sandwiches to the coyotes because they were hungry. So that might be an issue that animal regulation in the city of LA could deal with or could have dealt with. So coyote safety tips. It's really important to keep garbage cans closed and secure. Now, in most modern places, like here in West Covina, just like we have I live in Covina, next to you here. We've got nice contained containers out there. But again, sometimes it's really easy to miss that, or things get knocked over in the wind. So it's really, really important to make sure that you have really good sanitation around your garbage cans and they're kept closed and secure. You want to keep small pets indoors, especially at night, and keep pet food indoors or remove that after they've had their meals outside. Unfortunately, if you let your cat free roam, you're putting it into the food chain. There's just no other way around it. I mean, I wish I could put a bubble around it and protect it for you, but it just isn't. Same thing with small dogs. I mean, I get that they're our property, and that in our own enclosed backyard, they should be safe. But the bottom line is that coyotes, because they're such aggressive predators, they can and will defeat most of your efforts to protect them. So if you've got small dogs, you need to put them inside. Larger dogs, you're talking like Labradors, things like that, of that ilk, they're not food to coyotes. They're much too large. I'm not saying they would never take them, but I mean, the chances are much greater for the smaller Pekingese and Chihuahuas, things like that. They're much more predator-sized for them. Again, pick up your fallen fruit and cover compost piles. Compost piles, it's great to recycle. I think it's a great thing, but when you put food items, particularly things that might not be the best thing for, like, greasy bacon grease or things like that or whatnot, not only is that doesn't do very well for odors and things and brings other insects and things and it also can attract rats, which again is another prey species for these guys, but also it's very, very attractive for the coyotes. So you want to keep those covered up. Again, put away bird feeders at night to avoid attracting the rodents and other things that might be coyote prey. If you don't feed them if you don't have to. Other tips, you want to clear brush and dense weeds around your property. Of course, since we got Santa Ana winds and 103-degree temperatures, that's a good idea. Your fire department would be very happy that you do that as well. So that's a kind of a no-brainer. Have a wall or a fence at least 6 feet high around your backyard. Enlist your neighbors as a neighborhood wildlife watch. Our folks here from Fish and Wildlife are going to talk a little bit about this too. It's a great way to not only know your neighbors and be better engaged in what's going on, but you really, in this situation, you are your brother's keeper. And it makes a huge, huge difference when neighborhoods are engaged and help protect one another and kind of watch out for each other. It's really very, very cool. And again, you want to teach children to never approach coyotes or any wild animal, even a domestic dog. I mean, for as many issues that we have with coyotes, there's far more domestic dog bites than from coyotes, and that's a question of generally a predator-prey response when kids or even adults run from these animals. They just can't help themselves. So if you see a coyote, you want to admire it from afar, but you don't want to encourage it. You don't, hey, coyote, come here. You just, again, because they're already predisposed to understanding that associating food with humans, it's just not a good idea. Again, never, ever offer it food. Don't turn your back, ignore it, or run from a coyote. Again, canids have this predator-prey response. When you run from them, they can't help themselves. Kelly Keene, who was killed in 1981 in Glendale, she ran from the coyote, and it was more than likely that predator-prey response that unfortunately led to her demise. It's not a bad idea to carry a walking stick or any kind of a noisemaker at night or early during your morning walk, if that's what you do. Keep your pet next to you on a leash if they're with you, no more than 6 feet away. It'd be a very, very aggressive and unusual behavior for a coyote to come within 6 feet of a human. Again, we aren't prey for them, and they recognize that we dominate the area here. I mean, I'm not saying that they're cowardly animals or what have you, but they also understand, diminishing returns. They don't want to get hurt. They want something quick and easy to get out of. They know that we can be potentially dangerous to them. So if a coyote approaches you, you want to make eye contact. This is one of the animals that you want to make eye contact with. A bear, mountain lion, you don't want to do that. They don't like that. They know that they're a top apex predator. Coyotes don't. So you don't want to do that for those folks. You want to make yourself as authoritative and as big as possible. Remember, these guys, size matters to these guys. They will respect that. Try to scare it and appear threatening. This is one of those opportunities when you can, all those blue words that you're not supposed to use that we were taught in school, you can use all of those, again, toward the coyote. Clap, shout, make noises, wave your arms. Pick up small objects, such as a stone, toss it near it, try spraying it with water. Now again, remembering that you're in an urban neighborhood here, so you don't want to pick up the biggest rock you can and throw it through your neighbor's window or their SUV, but within reason, if you're reasonably good with your accuracy with your arm, that's not a bad thing to do. Again, do not turn your back on a coyote. You want to face it and slowly step back away from it, facing it and letting it know that you see it and it sees you. If a coyote attacks, call 911. If a coyote or other wild animal attacks or threatens to attack a human. Now, your police force here, the West Covina PD, they're great folks. They have lots of things to do. It's only in imminent threat to human life that you're going to want to have them come in and step in on a coyote thing. So if it's not that, please don't call them. Also, if a person is bitten, you want to make sure that the Department of Fish and Wildlife are reported. They're the first responders to incidents like that, and they can take care of that. So if you have issues with coyotes, you can contact my office. This is our general number here. This is our website, which you'll also find this brochure on. We have it in English, Spanish, and Mandarin. Something else you should be aware of, Coyote Cacher. This is something put on by UC Extension. This is an interactive map that you report your sightings of coyotes in your neighborhood, and then you can, after you answer a series of questions, you can ask to have any other sightings in your neighborhood, and then there's a red, yellow, and green alert system that they go by various threat levels, that if there's another threat level that you're interested in it's reported on this system, it will send a text to your phone and saying, hey, bring your kids in at night, that sort of thing. But it's out there. What they're using it for is to learn better spatial distribution patterns for coyotes, and it's very, very successful. So it's another one of our tools that we're learning more about urban coyotes. A last word, remember, it's us that have taught the coyotes to associate us with food, and it's only through our efforts that we're going to be able to minimize human and wildlife conflicts. We're really, the coyote, I mean, is only so smart. He can only do so much. Supposedly, we're the thinking folks out here that have the intelligence to be able to help mitigate these things. So it really behooves us to use everything we can to try to keep them wild and keep them where we like them to be, taking out the small animals and the vermin things out there and doing what coyotes do best. Thank you. Oh, sure. That one? Sure.
Did you say you had to pass out this information?
So at this time, I'm going to hand the microphone around so that the people that are watching this broadcast can hear the questions, and then I will also be handing out the pamphlet that Mr. Hartman brought with him.
Thank you. If a coyote is on our property attacking one of our dogs, just like if another dog got on our property, we're allowed to take care of the problem, aren't we, as a homeowner?
Yes, yeah. Coyotes are a non-game mammal. They can be taken in any fashion, any way that's considered legal.
And the website you had up there, will they go after a home and take the coyotes out if they're breeding in someone's home where they don't want to do anything about it? For instance, in a backyard, we have an address where it's an elderly couple. They don't even know what's going on.
Right. Well, the thing is, you know, there is private property rights, so that's where the city would probably get involved in something like that, in a code enforcement thing, because again, folks have rights to their property, and government agencies, and you wouldn't want us to just enter your property without your permission. So there are if folks, until we can acquire permission, we can't enter without that.
So a sighting on someone's property, we wouldn't contact that group? A sighting on someone's property, you can contact us, and we can also work with the city, and you can also talk to your city manager, that's what they're there for, and let them know and be aware of the problem, and then we can work on it together. Okay, thank you.
Yes, the question I have is what is the legality of how aggressive can we get towards the animals? Can we actually go out hunting them if they're within our area?
Well, so there's no discharge of firearms within incorporated city limits. So you're not going to be able to hunt them per se in the city of West Covina. Now, you know, you have peace officers and others that are authorized to discharge firearms when, you know, public safety is an issue. But, you know, you're not going to be able to take matters much beyond the protection of your own property.
Like setting a trap if you...
It is legal to, as long as you follow the Fish and Game guidelines, you can set traps. You can also hire private trappers to set traps on your property.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Okay, no worries.
How aggressive can we...
Yes. Again, they're non-game animals that can be taken at any time. They have no special, there's no bag limits, there's no seasons to them. If they're creating an issue, they can be removed.
I've lived in West Covina over 60 years, and up until 6 months ago, this was not a problem, ever. I mean, I've been in my own house for 40 years. Doggy doors, dogs could go in and out. Now we have to keep them locked in. We're not getting sleep. I want to know, how can we get rid of them? They don't belong here. They haven't been here up until what, last 6 months?
Well, they've been here for a long time. We've been dealing with them. For instance, now you have to remember too, West Covina has changed. I mean, I grew up here myself. I went to West Covina High School a billion years ago. But BKK dump used to be open areas. So, and they still have them, and they will until they completely build it out. The other thing is too, is coyotes, they're able to tolerate our presence. They are expanding their populations because we provide everything that we have here for them to be successful and to survive. So they will never go away. We will not eradicate them. There's no reason to eradicate them as long as we can keep the coexistence betwixt us. going, there's no reason to get rid of them. It's only those that become habituated that become an issue that would have to be perhaps removed. But coyotes are a part of our landscape, and they're going to be here long after we are.
But coexisting when they're eating our cats and dogs?
Well,
I mean, we've never had that issue before.
Understood.
That's not acceptable.
Well, I understand you, and I understand your concerns, and it concerns me as well. The thing is, though, is that they've been here. It's just their population has expanded. I think part of it, too, again, the city has continued to grow. All of the cities around us have become more urban. It has displaced normal patterns of feeding and behavior. And again, I think they've always been here, and they have adapted to our way of life to the point where they are going to take the easiest way to feed themselves. So again, what we want to try to do is by doing things, as Fish and Wildlife will talk about, as far as what we talk about hazing, to try to reintroduce fear into these animals and to get them past beyond that before they get to the tipping point where they become so aggressive that we're becoming a safety issue for humans. That's where we want to stop that. We don't want these things to have an issue where we have another death in Los Angeles County or anywhere for that matter, or any kind of injury.
Yeah, they must have gotten pushed away from another area, because like I said, up until just, this last 6 months ago, it was never even talked about, not even thought about. Not even on rare incidents.
We are addressing it now because it's a problem now. How come the city's not addressing it, like you said, it's a multiplying issue that it wasn't there before? How come the city?
Let me answer that. So that's the reason why we're here tonight, is to talk about developing a coyote management plan. And so my presentation next is going to be talking about some of those components, and then I can address some of your comments as to hot spots and maybe some things that you didn't know about as why they're popping up.
Yes, I want to just say thank you for coming out to address this issue. And also, there was an article in the latest fall edition of the West Covina magazine that talked about coexisting with coyotes. And I live near Larry, so until something affects you personally, I guess you don't really think much about it. Mm-hmm. But I also have a small dog that I've had to board up the doggy door and go out at night and stuff like that. But I would say it's a quality of life issue now. Many people have dogs in our area and they walk. I don't see too many people walking their dogs now. And I also do some volunteer work and out in a little car. So I've had the mailman flag us down and tell us, he saw coyotes, like 3 together. And then also a lady said, there was one sleeping on her porch. So it is, as Larry said, it's kind of unusual. It's really starting to happen here. But it is, we're glad you're here, and I guess we just need to spread the word and see what we can do here.
Well, and the thing is, like I say, to just the east of us here in Covina, we've never had the calls that we've had in Covina this year. We've had well over 250 calls from folks. Numerous pets were taken. Remember too that when habitats get modified, animals change their behaviors. So, and I'm not saying this is necessarily, and I don't want to blame Caltrans for this, but we have had major freeway construction along the freeways where those were large shelter belts, which provided a lot of habitat and whatnot. And this is just conjecture, but to me, that's one of the things in this area that has changed over the last year and a half, 2 years, is that they have modified that. They're also doing, I know flood control is doing a major renovation of a reservoir or a debris basin over by in Covina, right there along the freeway too. So there has been a lot of habitat manipulation for infrastructure protection for us. So that also changes things. We have had a drought. I'm not saying that they're being driven out of the hills, but I'm sure a certain amount of pressure has been done. And again, we continue to build in our hills here. And again, that does disrupt habitats. When BKK went in, I'm sure, when that was closed and they've put in the sports park now and all the things that are in there now, well, there were things that were living there before. I'm not saying that it forced them out of the neighborhoods, but it did change things. And when animals are forced to go into other areas, they adapt. Coyotes also adapt to the point where we feel that their behavior or their populations are expanding. They can tolerate, and they are tolerating our presence much better. We're providing everything they need with water and shelter and food, and well, and unfortunately, pets are part of their food chain. And again, that's something that we kind of manipulate as well. Again, pets are property. They're also our friends, and we have an emotional connection to them, and I appreciate that. But the thing is, it's up to us, unfortunately, because coyotes aren't going to go away, to make sure to do everything we can to protect our pets.
Have there been any instances of coyotes in our area being found to have had rabies? And is there any testing being done on a random basis to determine that?
To my knowledge, there have not been any cases of rabies. Coyotes don't seem to aren't nearly as prone to it. Skunks are much more prone to rabies. But yeah, whenever there's a suspect, and any time that a control action is done to remove coyotes, they do test for rabies as well. So, because there have been some human bite incidents over the last several years in Los Angeles County that have required that we had to remove some coyotes for that purpose.
Do they also test on animals?
I'm sorry?
If they capture a coyote that's bitten an animal, do they also test on it?
Not that I know of.
I have a question. If you know that when there's building before construction goes on, if you're aware of that, if our cities are aware of that, and they know that there could possibly be coyotes there living in that habitat, why is not somebody capturing them and putting them somewhere else before they come into our neighborhoods? This is what the problem is that they're in our neighborhoods now. And if you know that they're coming in, like you said, because of the construction and things are changing, then why isn't our cities going in, doing something about the problem before these animals are let out? These are wild animals. We have domesticated animals. I just don't get it.
Well, I'm sure city planners with your cities and all of the cities look at that. Also, remember that coyotes, like any other animal under the Fish and Game Code, cannot be relocated. Animals that, and for a number of good reasons. For one thing, you're taking an animal who knows where food and shelter and all that is, and you're putting it into another habitat where it doesn't know where that is. If a coyote is a problem in your neighborhood, you're going to now put that same problem animal in somebody else's neighborhood. If a area could support a coyote, there's already one there. So now you're also putting an animal that is going to be in direct competition with a native animal. You're also dealing with all kinds of different diseases in urban environments, and anything that a domestic dog can get, a coyote can get. So you may be taking diseases that are unknown. Let's say if you take from here and you put it up in the Angeles National Forest, so you may be transferring that. So under the Fish and Game Code, if you have an issue with a coyote, you either trap it and euthanize it, or you have to release it back onto its own property or within the same area.
Same thing with like if a pit bull was to attack, then they go after them and they euthanize them.
Not always.
Yeah, well, again, but that's also a domestic animal. It's a different kettle of fish.
And to clarify about the pit bull, so any dangerous animal, there's hearings, there's a whole process that you go through. It's not like you just remove the dog and then euthanize the dog or relocate. So there's a process. Jerry?
You mentioned that the coyotes are growing in population, or have been growing in population.
We feel that they are, yes.
Logic to me says that this is going to just keep growing because they're having more puppies.
Mm-hmm.
And like the feral cats, just keep growing. How do we reverse you can't give them birth control. I don't think there's firms coming or organizations like with the feral cats that do the fixing and relocating them. So how do we reverse the trend?
Well, and our fish and wildlife folks here will talk about the Wildlife Watch program. Part of that is, again, reinstilling or keeping instilled in the animals themselves that we need to keep them wild. We also want to make sure that we do everything we can to not encourage their ability to again, associate us with food. Because that's a huge, huge issue. Once they realize that we're going to feed them, then they have no fear anymore, and they actually will seek us out. So other animals, the same thing. You know, ground squirrels, which carry, you know, plague, they will come out and will walk up to you seeking because they've been fed. So the same thing is we want to keep these animals wild. And to best do that, we feel that hazing is one way of doing it. And if necessary, if it gets to the point where it's a public safety issue, then the animal needs to be removed.
How does one define a public safety issue, though? I think you
And that's,
define it differently.
yeah, we are going to talk about that during the plan aspect and talking about the overview and how we approach the mitigated response.
Not being able to relocate them. If a bear is down there in Dewarty, like they come down and do, they relocate them and send them back where they were from.
That's unfortunate. Well, bears are a different case. I understand, but it's just a different.
Squirrel, raccoon, and possum, we've had those for years. And well, we didn't have squirrels, but I mean, they just run around, but if you ignore them, they're fine. They're not going to eat our animals. But once you get the bigger prey, those bears, say we're in our neighborhood, they would do the same type of thing as a coyote. And they will remove them. They'll send them.
Not always. I'm going to jump in here.
Sure.
What happens is when the bear gets so habituated, if we have what we call a free strike.
Yeah.
If it comes back on the third time, an animal could be euthanized. Excellent questions, by the way. You guys are, you're on it.
Ma'am.
I just wanted to say that I've lived in West Covina all my life. So I've seen, since I was 5 years old, and that's back to 1960, coyotes all around. I live over near Cameron Park. Coyotes have been here for years. I've seen them, I've had cats been eaten by coyotes, and they come up through the wash. They know when trash day is. They're very, very smart. And don't turn your back on them because they will go after a small dog if you have one. But I've been around here and I've seen them numerous times. And yes, more recently. But, you know, at night, you guys don't come out at night. So that's really when they are coming out. Usually you don't see them except at dawn and dusk and at night when they come out. So that's probably why nobody's ever seen them, because you're really not out there at night.
We live on this side of the freeway, so maybe they found their way on this side.
Hey, maybe.
Sir.
Good evening. Mr. Hart, I have a question for you.
Sure.
I understand that the Department of Agriculture has been notified of obviously their sightings and the increase in the area. As residents, I understand that your office received about 15 phone calls regarding coyote sightings last year. In the middle of July, you had 135 sightings. Why did it take 3 months or well up until October for us to have a conversation about this increase in population? That's my first question. My second question is, in fact, we exterminate a coyote on our property defending our home, who do we speak to, or how do we address the issue without having to take further matters into our own hands to resolve the matter without having any legal repercussions?
Okay, well, so you're referring to calls specifically to the city of West Covina or calls to, well, yeah, but we, to be honest with you, we've received over, this year alone in call volume, we've received over 800 calls about coyotes throughout the entire 4,000 square miles of Los Angeles County, of which a fair percentage are sightings. That's just a question that, hey, I've seen a coyote, I want to report it to somebody. Was it doing anything? No, it was 9 o'clock at night and I happened to see it go by and I just wanted to tell somebody. So, yes. Uh-huh.
In Covina, as I understand it, it's coming from a source within your office, and it's migrated west onto our side. And it's primarily north of the 10, north of the mall. It's come from the Covina side. I'm assuming most of our people here tonight are from the and just so you know, I was personally affected by it. 2 little girls died as a result of coyote attack in our backyard. On September 9th at 9 o'clock in the evening, I have 2 small children that I now have to lie to about why they can't go play in the backyard unless I'm with them. My We're not violating any of the things that we need to do on your sheet to harbor them. In fact, our homes a few people here that know me that can attest to that. My concern now is, how can I actually make sure they're safe? I know they're going to attack dogs. I'm fully aware of that. Two of them a few weeks ago. How can I keep my little boy safe? What can we do? How can you help us make that happen?
Well, we do what we can. Unfortunately, we do all we can to do things. Now, West Covina is one of our contract cities where we can do and can provide direct suppressive action when authorized by the city. Now, having said that, not every place is conducive to being able to do that for a number of reasons. But our charge from the Board of Supervisors is to, after a incident is reported, to do what we can to prevent any further issues with human interactions. We don't want to have another human death. So that's what our aim is, that's what our point is. So we respond to calls based on what we're told from the public. And then we're authorized, depending on different cities, what our agreement is with them, whether they authorize us or whether we have carte blanche to do things. Here in West Covina, they authorize us to do suppressive action if that's warranted. So, there's that. As far as your legal concerns about taking summary action on your own, that is something that would be best talked to about with your local law enforcement and constabularies, because they're the ones that were going to be responding to that and would be the ones to take into consideration what the action was and whether it was justified or not for protection of your life and property. So, and I can't speak to that. Like I say, most cities prohibit, and I know West Covina does, prohibits the discharge of firearms within the city limits. So there isn't any chance for hunting, things like that. And these are very, very urban situations where you have to be very concerned about, discharging a firearm because of over-penetration and things like that, where it could be another tragedy. So you need to do everything you can to protect your people, your children, and your animals from harm. Sometimes that means taking them in early at night. You certainly have a 6-foot fence. You make sure that you harden the property to the point where they can't dig under. You do everything you can to protect your animals, but that may still mean that if you have small dogs, that you bring them in at night. Okay. Yeah.
So, sir, if at this point, because I'm going to get into some mitigated responses into the plan, and so we can talk more. And then I also have my business cards here, so if you have further questions for follow-up, even after I have presented and Fish and Wildlife have presented, because I do know that one of the hot spots is north of the 10 freeway, and so I'm going to address that as well. Does anybody have any last questions for Mr. Hartman? Okay, thank you so much. At this point, I do want to take a roll call, as this has been noticed as a special city council meeting. I'm neglecting my clerk duties since that's not my title. See how that works out. Mayor Warshaw. Here. Mayor Pro Tem Spence. Councilman Johnson. Here. Councilman Toma. Here. And Councilman Wu. Okay, let it reflect that we do have a quorum of 3 councilmen present. At this time, I'm going to dive into just a summary of the Coyote Management Plan. As it is in draft form at this point, it's still being developed, so there's nothing in full to disclose at this point. But I did want to touch on some points and some of the things that you have brought up from the community. In talking about how we would like to approach a Coyote Management Plan, we have to balance the coexistence, as you've heard from Mr. Hartman, with protecting wildlife, balancing respect of wildlife, and also protecting public safety. And some of you tonight have expressed your concerns, and I know I've received some of those phone calls and had emails and followed up with some of you who are here and others who are not. It's a three-pronged approach that we're looking at. Public education, which I will tell you is a huge and vital piece. If you are doing your part, as the gentleman mentioned, his house is tight as can be, no issues, immaculate, bushes are trimmed, yard is nice and neat, but your neighbor's house is overgrown, coyotes will find a home in your neighbor's home and unbeknownst to you. So this is kind of what's been going on the north side in some of the areas. We've had some school closures. I will tell you, Covina Valley was very, very quick to address and mitigate an issue that was going on. I believe it was Pioneer Elementary School. So I got a call from some residents repeatedly. Again, it was like one after the other in 1 week. And I contacted the county, or the county contacted me. We were back and forth, and they were receiving calls at the supervisor's office, and we were trying to figure out what was going on. Sure enough, we realized that in 1 day's time, the Covina Valley had closed a school that they did not know that they had a rodent problem there and some natural habitat that had been developed, and it was in a very short amount of time. The school district abated the issue right away, and I didn't receive any more phone calls. So that's an example of, I'm not saying that they're still not in your neighborhoods, but that's an example of abating an issue and now they are moving on. As Mr. Hartman had mentioned, Caltrans, the traffic that's been going on the 10 freeway, the construction that's been going on. One of the things that you need to understand, because I understand that the woman had mentioned about when development is happening and how, why isn't the city notifying the residents? When there's private development going on, the city is not always aware of the nuisance issues that are there either before or after. So that's where we really have to have the help of the public and really get our code enforcement involved. And I can tell you this example of the school, I also alerted code enforcement to also patrol the area so that they could talk to homeowners that maybe had overgrowth, because I have driven in that neighborhood. We have a daycare, right over there off of Puente and Lark Ellen, and that is a hotspot area. The flood control channel has been a hotspot area. We received, there was about 84 calls for complaint, I think, about last year, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Hartman, last year, the last 2 years, but it's actually not all of West Covina, it's Covina, West Covina, and they're actually sightings. The majority of them were sightings. Somebody had heard, through my dad calls it the coconut telegraph. Somebody had told somebody who told somebody who told somebody, and they called and said they heard about a coyote sighting. They hadn't actually seen it. They'd seen remains of a cat or small dog or rodent, weren't really sure what it was. The only complaints that we have heard about are dogs that are attacked or cats that are attacked further than 6 feet off of leash, and can be also in backyard. We've had no human bite attacks, no dogs that were killed within 6 feet of being attached to a leash or next to a person. So beyond 6 feet, it's perceived that you are off leash. Your pet is off leash. So we're really trying to work with residents about the education component, and that's part of the plan moving forward, is that we will have an outreach component and an education push, because it's not about you fixing just your property. It's kind of like the neighborhood watch, right? Crime starts to go down when neighbors band together and really start being advocates for their own neighborhood, and so that's what we're asking you to do at this point. Also, enforcement of laws and regulations. You really shouldn't be feeding wild animals. And feral cats, for all intensive purposes, are wild animals. Feral cats are increasing in coyote consumption. So while it was typically rodents, now feral cats are starting to increase. And I was at a presentation with Kent Smurl from Fish and Wildlife, and one of the California researchers was talking about how, while it's still not the majority of their diet, feral cats are increasing. And I know there's been concern with maybe that we do a trap and release for feral cats, but feral cats are not contributing to society. Yes, they might be killing some birds and keeping a bird population down, but so do coyotes. So when you are feeding the other animal and you just keep this vicious cycle, we are helping the population thrive. When you are feeding cats because you feel like poor cats, even though they're not feral cats, are not getting their meal, and maybe it's your neighbor's cat who's roaming and you're just feeding them, and so you're helping your neighbor. These are all things that contribute to the increase in coyote sightings. If you are throwing out your garbage 2 days early and you are not putting the lid on tightly, those are things that contribute, because you're drawing not only coyotes, but skunks, raccoons. If you live in the South Hills, you could be attracting other wildlife that you're not even aware of, but your neighbors see. I had residents talking to me about how, and these are South Hills residents talking about how they live in near open space, but they would like the city to pay for a wall to be built between their property and the open space. That's not feasible, nor am I going to construct a fence on somebody's private property, but the coyotes were there before, and they will continue to be there, especially in the open space. Mr. Hartman had mentioned the drought. While we have received more water this last year, we are still in a drought for all intents and purposes. It's October, and it's 105 degrees out today. So the development, the increased interaction in the urban area, it's all keeping them and pushing them out of their natural, what is considered or perceived as their natural habitat. They are all coming, and they're coming to live with us as our neighbors. So we need to be more vigilant. We need to be aware, not only with the education piece, but with the enforcement. And if you see neighbors feeding animals, wild animals, feral cats, please report that to the animal control, because we will go out there and we will work with the neighbors to stop that behavior. The third thing, and definitely not last and least important, is public safety. I hear your concerns. I have 2 small children myself. I would not be telling you that it was not important to me. I would not be here and working with you and our council and our staff to try to come up with a comprehensive plan if I didn't think that that was utmost importance. While it is important, we have legal rights that we have to make sure that we are retaining for our wildlife as well. We cannot just go out, and this goes back to the gentleman talking about the different mitigated threat responses, right? So while some of you are advocating for we just need to trap, we just need to trap, we just need to trap, completely understandable in your worry about what's going on in your neighborhoods. From the city's perspective, legally, we have to have our ducks in a row before we just start removing coyotes and euthanizing. It would not be prudent, not for the city's perspective, but for the ecosystem as well. So we're trying to balance all of that, and I know some of you are not thrilled to hear that, but you are able to do what you need to do on your private property, and we can talk more about that specifically when Fish and Wildlife comes up and whatnot, but I'm gonna talk about some more things as we move forward here. So again, talking about while we do place a high value on wildlife and wild animals, we do understand that they cause problems, and they are causing more problems for some of you than others. Some of you are aware they've been around. Some of you, it's more of an issue because now they're on your front doorstep or literally on your neighbor's porch. I do have to correct myself because I had mentioned in a past council meeting, a woman had come up and said they were on her fence. I said, well, they dig more than they get up on fences, and next door, blew up with all these pictures of coyotes on people's fences. It is more prevalent. They're getting onto your fence from a lower fence line, from another roof. I mean, they are connecting that way and then jumping down into your backyard and swooping in on your cats or dogs. So I understand that's concerning. So obviously 6-foot, 8-foot fences are preferable, but sometimes you just can't do what you would like to do to keep them out. And so there's, detractants, there's different homeopathic remedies and all those kinds of things that we would like to, disseminate to the public. As I mentioned before, state and federal laws, we cannot just trap and euthanize, trap and relocate. It just doesn't work that way. So we have to have a plan in place. And it's prudent. I can tell you, the city of Arcadia, they decided at one point, I don't know if any of you are aware of this, but they decided, and I don't know if this was a year ago, a few months ago, but that they would go out and hire, the residents came out in full force, were very upset. The council approved to spend money, and they just started trapping and euthanizing coyotes. They didn't have a plan going forward at that point, and they ended up getting sued. They got sued. They had a Native American tribe in their city council chambers burning sage and protesting, and it was ugly. And so we're not making decisions based on whether or not we're going to get sued. We're making decisions based on what is morally, legally, ethically the right thing to do, and in keeping in mind public safety as well. So one of the things I did want to make sure that you're aware of is that we are trying to monitor and collect the data. So we do have a Coyote logbook at Cameron Community Center. It's our center that's open the majority of the time, 7 days a week. So if you have a sighting, we are asking that you call the community center. The number is listed here, and you can report the coyote sighting. We are trying to map out what our hotspots are at this point. I have an idea from people who have called me, but we want to get a collective map and kind of a big picture in mind. So off the top of my head, I can tell you Puente Lark Ellen is just the kind of jumping point, and then in the South Hills, we get the majority of our calls. If you are having significant issues that are a little bit more complex than just a basic sighting, or that you saw your neighbor's dog get attacked, or that you saw your neighbor's cat or yours and it was beyond the 6-foot mark, please, I will hand out my business cards. You can contact me directly via email or phone, and we can set up some time to talk, because I do want to know what's going on. If there's significant issues, as Mr. Hartman mentioned, we do have a contract with the county under general services specifically, and if there is a significant public safety issue in a specific area, we need to target that, we need to talk about that some more, and we need to look at, is there a pack of coyotes? Is there one coyote? Is there two? I don't know what the situation is. And there are remedies that we can take to move down the next steps as far as checking your yard, checking your neighborhood, and then continuing on down the path. And if it happens to be that we do need to trap and euthanize a coyote, we will do that if it's in the best interest of public safety. But I can tell you from the city's perspective, we are not giving them a call right off the bat to tell them to come and trap and euthanize. Yes, ma'am.
Is that phone number just for West Covina residents, or can Covina residents also call that number?
This is for West Covina residents. We're not tracking Covina's activity. While Covina's activity does spill over into our borders, we are accepting that. But if you're calling about a coyote if you're a West Covina resident, you're calling about a coyote that's literally on the borderline, yeah, absolutely, I want to know about that. But if you are a Covina resident, then I would advise to call City Hall at Covina. The other opportunity that you have is to go on our mobile app or on our online. We do have an app, and I ask you to go under other. I did have a woman call me and explain to me that there was a little glitch, because when you go onto our mobile app and you click animal control, it immediately pushes it to Baldwin Park Animal Control, because typically people that are looking for animal control are calling to report a stray dog, an injured dog, a hit dog, etc. So under the other tab, you can describe what your situation is. You're not reporting graffiti. So the mobile app is designed to be a work order app. So forgive me if you report it and it gets reported to me and then it says case closed. It's not telling you that your case is closed. It's just saying for the purposes of the app that I have received it and I'm addressing it, okay? But for emergency purpose, you are going to call 911. And again, this echoes the sentiments of Mr. Hartman, you don't want to call 911 if you just see a coyote. Please do not overload our switchboard for the dispatch as they handle emergency medical services and police calls. Yes, Jerry.
I don't think community services when I think of animal issues. Will that be on the website at like coyote sightings or reportings or something?
Yes, we will be updating when we get our coyote management plan updated. We will have all of that on the tab. Yes, I know there are some cities where the city manager holds that particular contract, and now that I am in the city manager's office, dual role as assistant city manager and community services director, I get to take that little nugget with me. So yes, and in my former life, I did humane education, so I know it just follows me. Yes.
I did spot a coyote, and I did call that number the other day, and they seemed clueless.
Yeah, I think there's a little learning curve, and I did talk to the supervisor there, and I think there was just somebody, the particular person who answered the phone at that one moment. Yeah, we have addressed that though, so hopefully moving forward, yes. But again, I'm going to hand out my business cards, so if in the future any of you have any issues, please call or email me directly. Yes, ma'am.
Additionally, I believe West Community probably does not know about this number universally, because I was walking and I was doing my evening walk and approached by a coyote. I got as big and mean as I could get, and he wasn't backing down. I live in South Hills. And I got as big and mean as I could get, and he wasn't backing down. I was waving a couple cars down. Finally, an officer pulled up, and I was like, oh, thank goodness we have it. Because he's still sitting there staring me down, and I'm not going to back away from this
Yeah, and
I'm still standing there with the coyote the whole time.
well, thank you for that feedback. I will definitely share that with the chief of police. And yes, while we have had some transition, obviously that didn't make its way to all the officers, so I will make sure that that memo goes out. So, yeah, thank you.
Did you say tribes were suing the group in Arcadia?
There was a protest at the city council meeting. There was actually, I don't know if they were a party to that lawsuit, but there was a lawsuit that they were filing under CEQA. So to say that removing coyotes is exempt from environmental in terms of that it does not make any environmental change would be not true, because obviously there is a domino effect.
I didn't know if the tribes claim ownership of the coyotes. Is that what's happening?
I think it was more of a ethical treatment of animals type of a situation. Yes. Okay, so one of the things that Mr. Hartman mentioned was hazing. And while it sounds like one of our residents was trying a technique that did not work, so this is a part of fear conditioning. And so hazing in some ways is looked at, well, I'm just going to stand there and look big and scary, and then the coyote's not going to be afraid of me and move along. But it's not just a one tool type of technique. You have to try different things, and you have to continue until the coyote is gone. Otherwise, the coyote will wait you out and then still hang around until you get into a police car or get... Yeah, so again, so this is an example of, we will talk, because if this coyote is persistent, then we may need to have a further discussion. So yeah, can I just finish going through this and then I'll come back to you. Thank you. So one of the goals of hazing is to reshape coyote behavior, because obviously they've gotten comfortable. They have food and water at their disposal because we're really nice. We feel bad for them, and we'd like them to stay around for a long time, right? Apparently. One of the other goals is to give you, the residents and businesses, tools to actively engage and reshape their behavior. And we need to model appropriate and effective hazing behavior and share the information. Because what did I mention earlier is that you can have the best yard ever, but if your neighbor has a yard that is becoming a habitat, it will just be a domino effect. Kind of like if you have gophers, but your neighbor has gophers, and if you all don't get together to fix your gophers, then they're gonna keep coming back and you're gonna waste a lot of time and money. So in summary of hazing, there's basic hazing, which is standing your ground, not ignoring, don't turn your back, yelling, making frightening noises until the animal chooses to leave. More aggressive hazing, including throwing a brick, a rock, towards the animal, not at the animal. We are not advocating for you to hurt the animal, although I'm thinking that you're hoping that it gets hurt before you do. But again, trying to be as ethical as possible. And it should be conducted in a manner as to not corner the coyote. You do not want to create a situation where you've put the coyote back against the wall and it's fight or be hurt, because then it will may attack. So you need to make sure that you're giving it an out. One of the common concerns with hazing is that you're putting yourself into a potentially dangerous situation. So as I just mentioned, you don't want to put it into a corner, you don't want to put it up against a wall, but some elements of an effective hazing program include not leaving food out, as we mentioned. So these are things that you can do, and part of your yard checklist is that you received if you grab the handout on your way in, talks about some of these things to protect your yard, protect your pets, protect your children and your family. You don't want to attract the coyote if at all possible. Residents learning the effective techniques of hazing, and it needs to be sustained for a period of time. So if you're going to haze and after 2 minutes, I'm done, I can't take this anymore, I'm just gonna go inside, the coyote will just know that it can wait you out. And it's also a team approach. So if your husband, spouse, wife, friend, family member, neighbor, they're home, team up, or repeated hazing, different times of day. If you're seeing the coyote at different times of day, you want to try to come at it from all different angles and multiple tools. So You're talking about, basic to more aggressive. You're talking about noise makers. If you had a bullhorn, if you have a can, with some coins in there, shakers, throwing objects towards the animal, spraying water at the animal. Those are all effective things in combination. So you're not going to just do one thing, but multiple and for a sustained amount of time, and increasing as the coyote becomes more comfortable. But again, it will wait you out if you're not consistent and not committed to the cause, I shall say. So when we are talking about mitigated response, so different observation levels. When you hear a coyote, that is considered observation level green. And this is, again, this is for draft purposes. This is what we're talking about when basically we're not going to respond like code red, right? So green is minimal. So you hear a coyote. Okay, so we can provide you education materials. We're not gonna, it's not a 5-alarm fire. You heard a coyote. Those of you who live in South Hills, I'm sure you hear coyotes a lot, right? And those of you who apparently live above the 10 freeway are starting to hear them too. So coyotes seen moving in an area. So this is a sighting level green. Okay, again, we would like to, it's normal coyote behavior. We can provide educational material. We have educational handouts, and so on and so forth. So coyote seen resting in an area. That's also a sighting level, but it's green. A coyote seen resting in an area with people present. Okay, now we're a little bit more concerned, right? So as you can see, we're escalating this. So okay, that's a little bit concerning. Coyote entering a yard without pets. Little concerning, but again, no pets, no children. So why is it there, right? So now we're going to be educating on the coyote attractants, what caused them to come into the yard. Maybe do a yard audit, provide hazing information. How do I haze? What do I do? What are some effective techniques? Coyote entering a yard with pets. Now that's an encounter, it's a caution, right? We're concerned, level yellow. Again, audits in your yard, coyote attractants, what caused them to come there, pet safety. Now we're concerned about maybe there was food bowls left out, right? Maybe because now we have a pet that was in the yard. Coyote entering a yard and injuring or killing a pet without people present. So now this is a heightened level, okay? This is above just okay, I'm a little bit concerned. I'm really concerned now. This is level orange. So now we want to gather more information about the specific incident. We want to know the circumstances, the time of day, going through the yard audit. So it's basically building upon all the things that we've just talked about. So you're going to do a yard audit. You're going to talk about education. You're going to talk about hazing and moving forward. Coyote biting or injuring an unattended pet or pet on leash longer than 6 feet. So remember, I mentioned anything more than 6 feet is considered off leash. To a coyote, that is off leash. So I know some of you have been to the dog park or just been out at a park and you've seen people with a really long 12-foot leads. Those are actually training leads. So the municipal code calls for a 6-foot leash or less. So a dog should not be on a leash larger than 6 feet. Do we see them? Do we permit them because they're, not causing an issue? Sure. But are they really allowed? No.
I just want to have mine in my backyard.
I know. Yes. And that's a concern.
And you can't leave for any length of time without locking them up in the house. What about people that are working? You have to lock them up in the house. We went away during the daytime, came home late evening. Is our job dead when we're getting home?
Right. So you and I are going to want to talk after this to find out where you live and to talk about some specifics that are going on at your property, and I assume the gentleman in the back as well, since both of you are living up above the 10 freeway.
Because the only thing that's going to happen is they're going to take our pets down, and then they're going to do something about it.
No, and that's why I'm telling you, I'm talking to you now about it, and we're talking about developing the plan, because we are serious. We have Fish and Wildlife, and we have the county here. So we are hearing you, and I'm not trying to mitigate that. It's just that I don't have the answer to give you right now, because I don't know where you live, and I don't know what the circumstances, and a yard audit could be what we need to do, and just take a look at all the factors, so.
Fine, none of those things on the list.
Okay.
Okay, there's also the problem with Caltrans. They do not maintain their property. And we've had several complaints in that area. We cannot get them. We know that's where these coyotes are hanging out.
Are you above the wall? There was a wall. Okay, so yeah, we'll get together and find it. We have contacted Caltrans, so I'll follow up with you after the meeting because it is a concern of ours and we've.
Yeah, I represent the neighborhood watch in that area.
Okay. Okay, so next one is coyote following or approaching a person without a pet, otherwise known as stalking, right? This is an encounter. It's a level red encounter. We are very concerned about this. So this is where we start to discuss, is it warranted to have removal and euthanasia? So it's not removal or euthanasia. It's typically trap, euthanize, okay? So any of these that are discussing on encounters, incidents, level red, we are considering removal, euthanasia. Coyote following or approaching a person and a pet. That's stalking as well. Coyote entering yard or home without people and pets and no injury occurring. Coyote biting or injuring attended pet or pet on leash 6 feet or less. Coyote aggressive, showing teeth, back fur raised, lunging, nipping without contact. Coyote biting or injuring person. So again, all of these, we have gone through the range of what the city, the county, Fish and Wildlife feel are cautionary or not, basic coyote behavior to cautionary to increased concern to now we need to talk about whether or not we're going to evaluate removal and euthanasia, okay? So at this point, I know some of you have specific questions. Again, these are components that we're talking about adding in a plan. So in summary, we're talking about a three-pronged approach to education, enforcement, and balancing public safety, as well as the components of such a thing as yard checklist, hazing, which is a huge component of the plan, because in order for coyotes to be uncomfortable in their area, we need to get residents and businesses to band together to make them feel uncomfortable and to create a level of discomfort and fear conditioning that makes them want to move somewhere else other than in your backyard, okay? So at this time, I will take some questions and then I will be calling up Fish and Wildlife, and maybe they will have more answers than I will too. Yes, Jerry.
I live in their neighborhood, a few blocks away. And I am the nutty neighbor that puts a sign in the yard that there's a coyote in the neighborhood saying where it was at. Mark Allen, the park, Palmview Park.
Yes.
Airplane Park seems to be, I've seen them there. How often does the city go through the parks and look for them and get rid of the trash cans?
Yeah, daily, trash is being serviced daily, and staff is in the parks daily. But as far as going through the parks and looking for them, no, we don't daily go through looking for them. When we start to hear that there's issues or sightings, and we honestly are not getting them in our parks. We're hearing about them in the residential areas outside of the open space, outside of Heritage Park, Shadow Oak Park, down from Gulfster. I mean, natural places where you anticipate seeing them, other than the increased incidence that I would say of seeing them about the Lark Ellen Puente area.
Well, that's giving some of us the impression they're in the parks when they say they're near, or I saw one at Airplane Park or something, so they're not actually in the parks living.
Yeah, no, they're not living in the park. We don't have low-hanging fruit or bushes or debris or an abandoned building. Those are the kinds of things, and they're drawn to gophers too. So when, we haven't had any issues of gophers in our parks. So when we are aware of, like we have a resident that calls us and lets us know that there's extra dry brush along his property line and the park line, and so we go and abate that issue. So any of those kinds of things, and that's why I can't stress enough the importance of calling when you see or encounter some area, or even if it's not your property, to report, because we just can't possibly be everywhere. We have over 110,000 people, and multiple people living in residence, and there's just no way. So like I said, code enforcement is very aware, police are very aware, so it's unfortunate to hear about the incident that you mentioned, ma'am, and so I will follow up.
Well, a couple weeks back, there were coyotes on our street. And my neighbor calls, he texts us, he lets us all know, get your dogs in, there's coyotes. And this is 7:30 or so on a Saturday morning. There also seems
Yeah, understandable. Absolutely understandable. Sir?
Do we have a sense of how much the coyote population has increased, or is it the same coyotes just being displaced running around town? Because that's one question. So, do you have an idea of the increase in population of coyotes over any period of time? Or is it the same ones that are being chased around throughout the city?
We don't have the specific stats of increased numbers. What I can tell you is that animals travel a very far distance. So even domestic dogs, they could be in this city today and they could be in Pomona by the end of today. That's how fast they travel. So we don't know if they are the same coyotes circulating or if they've made more babies and they're populating more. We don't know.
And I saw an interesting documentary on they were following coyotes in large urban areas throughout the United States, and it was pretty fascinating because I never thought that they would be roaming around the populated areas. But is it part of the plan to start tracking some of these coyotes within our area to see where maybe the hotspots are, number one, and when we, is the data of where the hotspots are, where the coyotes are roaming around, is that going to be available to the residents instantaneously? Because I personally, I jog, I drink a marathon sometimes, and I have encountered coyotes, at 5 o'clock in the morning, and it'd be nice to know kind of where the hotspots are, so I can plan my routes and so forth.
True. To answer your question about whether or not we're going to be tracking them in this area, that would be a question for Fish and Wildlife. But as far as the hotspots, what I'm doing now is taking the information that residents call in or email me, and we're populating, and then we will develop a map. But it's not going to be like an interactive real-time map. So if you get up tomorrow morning and wake up and want to know, it's not going to be that up to date. So, yes.
I have a question. While the city's sorting out the plan to abate the coyotes or resolve whatever it is you're trying to do, can we as residents band together and fund the tracking of these animals on our own privately? Can we do that?
Well, as far as what you do on private property, that's up to you. As far as what the city will do, unfortunately, I can't answer that question because it's not a matter of funding at this point. It's a matter of appropriate response. And I can't say, yes, just go trap when I don't know the circumstances involved. I mean, I'm hearing what you're saying, but I need to dissect where you live and kind of map it out. And then together, we would get together with the county and Fish and Wildlife and make that decision. It wouldn't be Nicole's decision. Yes?
How many more pets are we going to lose before the plan actually works? Because we're seeing our neighbors' dogs being shredded, the cats being shredded. How much more planning has to go into effect before you go out and send out groups to get them in the morning, early morning, when they're wandering around looking for homes?
So what I had just mentioned earlier was that after this meeting, I will get together and find out where you live, and then we'll have more dialogue to follow up on, because I can't answer that question right now. Jerry?
I mentioned this once at a council meeting, and we had a slide, and going back to the fencing. I never realized that coyotes were so agile and could jump, and when we get the reported sightings in our neighborhood, and we're within blocks of each other, we get, the neighbors are saying they jumped over into other yards. No, right, and on roofs and all that. What I really would like to encourage is a little bit user-friendly terminology than what was on the slide with an asterisk, or maybe it's in the handout. Yeah, it's in the handout, fencing. Has
We'll work on a coyote exclusion for you, Jerry. Yeah, I can't answer that except for I do know that planning is trying to be, and not that they're not nice, because they are, but sometimes the perception is that it's not as customer friendly, and I can tell you they are really working on that perception.
They did send me an email that the bottom paragraph was user-friendly. Okay, so some, that concept is what I'd like to see in your stuff.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, then at this time, I will call up Dave Dodge and Kent Smurl from the U.S. Department of Fish and Wildlife, California Department of Fish and Wildlife.
Nicole, I have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
There was a coyote, and it was on Next Door Neighbor, or the Next Door,
Nextdoor.com.
yeah, whatever the hell it's called. But anyways, and the lady lived up in South Hills, and this coyote was trying to get through the window to get at her and her kids. Yeah, and. At her house? At her house. Well,
See, this is the problem with Nextdoor. I don't subscribe to Nextdoor. I don't so if you're not reporting it, if it's just a public advisory for your neighbors, that's Nextdoor. If you're wanting to create an incident and let the city know, then somebody would need to contact me or report it to the Cameron community.
I'll have to go back and look and check and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But this coyote definitely was probably sick, ill, or injured or something like that.
Maybe,
I was
perhaps.
wondering if anybody knew if that coyote had rabies. It wasn't foaming at the mouth, but it did circle, and I know they do circle when they have.
Yeah, and there could have been a lot of reasons about what was going on, and we don't want to surmise, and I can tell you that, as they had mentioned before, there have not been rabies.
Well, I know that, but that's what I was asking.
Yeah.
You know, because if it wasn't reported, these gentlemen, I'm sure would know. You know.
Right.
So, you know, it showed on there that it was prancing back and forth and actually going at the window to try to get.
So if you would like to go back onto that account and then let me know if the person's information is included, sure. Thank you. Okay, at this point, we're going to have Fish and Wildlife speak.
Thank you, Nicole and Jim. Great job. Kent Smurl, I'm a lieutenant with Fish and Wildlife, have been for a number of years. I'm going to talk briefly about what I do, and I'll probably have we want questions. That's what we want. Great dialogue tonight. Okay, what I am, I'm a conservation coach. What's a conservation coach? That's somebody that guides agencies at the agency level. That's what I've been doing the last 6 to 8 years through a learning process in conservation and ecological principles. To date, with Jim, we've partnered with LA County Agricultural Commission and University Extension and with other agencies to coach and give information to over 100 agencies, 100 cities in Los Angeles and Orange County. My role, my goal is to get them motivated to create what you saw up here on this plan, which they've done a great job. It's a work in progress, though. What we ask you to do is just what you did tonight, show interest and show up. This is Dave Dodge. He's a community coach. What I do is I train community coaches to go out to be able to interact with the community and empower them to get involved in a program called Wildlife Watch. And I'm going to leave that up to Dave, and we're going to answer questions, but I'm going to turn this one over to Dave.
Thanks, Kent. Hi, everybody. I'm a conservation coach, Dave Dodge. Been in the program, and by the way, I'm a volunteer, just like some of you are here in the room. I've been in the program with California Department of Fish and Wildlife about 2.5 years. My specialty is community organizing. And you guys, I've been working with communities now for the last 18 to 20 months, all over Southern California, trying to get these animals off the street. We've had some really, really good success stories. One of the success stories we had was in Irvine. And we put a Wildlife Watch program into a real hotspot area in the city of Irvine. And in the first 12 months after we implemented the program, and I'll talk a little bit more about it as we go through it, but in the first 12 months, they didn't have a sighting. And they had a bite in the area and numerous sightings before we put this program in effect in the community. Basically, Wildlife Watch organizes the community and particular hotspots where there's a lot of coyote activity to to work and get as many residents involved in the program as we can. One, walk in the streets, providing education, doing inventory of backyards, talking about these animals. And the biggest problem, you guys, I have as a volunteer in working in Southern California, we are feeding these animals. We are doing it either directly or indirectly, but we are creating a smorgasbord for these animals, and they are never going to go away when they've got food, water, shelter, and space. Now, all of us, including myself, we look to the government to take care of this problem. Let me tell you, folks, the government is not going to take care of the coyote problem for us. We have to do it as a group, as a community, as an organization. We've got to unite. We've got to take back our streets. And that's what I help do. Now, let me give you a real quick typical example. Tomorrow, I'm going to be in the city of Palos Verdes, Palos Verdes Estates. Tomorrow, I'm going to train 8 to 12 of their volunteers that are attached to the police department. I'm going to start training, using the training process. I'm going to start teaching these guys how to become a conservation coach like myself. All right? And these people are attached to the police department. That's good news. One, the city has control. Two, messaging. The city is going to put out the message they want in the communities, in the hotspots, using their volunteers. Let me tell you what we're going to do tomorrow. Tomorrow, I'm going to take them through the City of Palos Verdes management plan, coyote management plan, and make sure these volunteers understand that plan backwards and forwards. Why? Because the end game is we're going to the streets, we're going to the neighborhoods and knock on doors. And people are going to ask questions just like you did about these animals. And what's the city going to do about it? What's its position? How's it going to handle it? The second thing we're going to do is they've got a pre-class reading assignment called Pest Notes. And Jim Hartman knows all about Pest Notes. University of California, Davis put out a great report, a great study on coyotes and their behavior and the ecology. And just some great information. I'm going to take these volunteers through that to make sure they know as much about these animals as they can possibly know. Third thing we're going to do tomorrow is I'm going to share 18 to 20 months experience questions that people like yourselves ask when I go knocking on doors. That make sense? That's what we're going to do tomorrow. On Thursday, I'm going to come back and take them through from soup to nuts, Wildlife Watch. How to implement it, how to take it into the community and work with their local neighbors and friends, because we're using volunteers now attached to the police department, but I've worked with CERT groups, I've worked with neighborhood watch teams. The only groups I've worked with homeowner association groups. The only groups I haven't worked with are young adults like Sea Scouts or Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or something like that, or a church organization, and hopefully we'll get some of them involved as Kent and I continue to try to spread the word. So on Thursday, soup to nuts, I'm going to take them through how to take this program to the street. On Saturday, this coming Saturday for this week, we're going to meet in the field in a hotspot, and we're going to walk the neighborhood. And we're going to look for attractants in the neighborhood. We're going to inventory backyards for those homeowners that will allow us to do that. We're going to go into the backyard and survey it and look. You guys listen to me. Something's bringing these animals into the community, and something is keeping them here. I'll tell you what it is. It's food, water, shelter, and space is keeping them here. What's bringing them in? You know what I've found on every investigation I've done in the last 20 months? When there's been a bite on a human, there's been a feeder in the neighborhood. And I don't mean somebody that's feeding indirectly, meaning feeding their dog or their cat, whatever, with food and water, leaving it outside. I'm talking about people feeding directly, feeding wildlife directly. It is a huge problem in our society. We got to stop it. If we could cut down on people feeding these animals, believe you me, we wouldn't be here tonight. And I promise you, that's from 18 to 20 months experience. So on Saturday, we're going to walk the streets. We're going to talk to as many residents as we can. We're going to provide some education. We're going to leave pamphlets and handouts. We're going to talk to everybody, inventory backyards, and more importantly, look for attractants in the neighborhood. Now let's talk about some quick testimonials, if you will. Irvine, we put this program in place. The first 12 months after we implemented the program, they didn't have a sighting. They didn't even see a coyote. In the 13th month, the first sighting happened that they reported. Coyote ran from that end of the street to that end of the street, never looked back, never stopped, just kept running through, just passing through. That was the first sighting. Yeah, that's exactly right. By the way, interesting comment. You guys understand, you take away food, water, shelter, space out of an area that's having a hot spot, those animals move on. They go to another area where they get food, water, shelter, and space. You understand that? So if we do a good job as a community, dumpsters in apartment building complexes, huge problem. Dumpsters in golf courses, huge problem. Dumpsters at colleges. Culver City, another great success story. We had a terrible problem in the Culver Crest. 550 magnificent homes up on the crest in Culver City. On one side, we had West Los Angeles College. Right directly behind this wonderful hilly area, we had Standard Oil in the oil field. On this side, we had a mortuary and cemetery. And then you got the community, these 500 homes. We took the neighborhood watch groups from those areas. There were 20 teams that covered these 550 homes. We didn't get all 20 teams to participate in the Wildlife Watch program. We got 11. So 11 of the neighborhood watch captains, block captains, took on wildlife. We put Wildlife Watch in. You guys, this year, you know how many sightings they've had in that area this year? 2. No bites, no pet attacks, but 2 sightings. That's what happens when neighbors get together and help each other and get people to quit feeding. Now, you guys, I'm telling you, I know if you think about it, there's somebody in your area that you might suspect is feeding. Just think about it, because we find it everywhere, you guys. It is a huge problem, and it's not just coyotes. I almost got knocked on my backside one time approaching a woman with her 2 little grandkids. She was feeding the ducks at a lake. Feeding wildlife is bad business. It is bad business for all of us. Mother Nature will take care of these animals if we leave them alone, okay? So, Wildlife Watch works, Culver City, Torrance. And just a suggestion for the city, I might add. Nicole was really good to talk about hazing. You know what my experience has been with hazing in the last 20 months? General public, not a good thing. Doesn't work real well. Why? Because there's a lot of people, 1, that don't want to haze, 2, aren't capable of hazing. You know what has worked extremely well? Is us taking a volunteer group, either a CERT, Neighborhood Watch, maybe even volunteers just attached to the police department, hand-picking some people to haze, training them on basic and advanced hazing techniques, and then when the city starts seeing hot spots in the city, and starts looking at the time that the calls are coming in, okay, and being reported, we send the hazers, this group of hazers, professional hazers if you want to call them that, we send them out, and they walk the street, start looking for these animals before they get on the wall and before they come over the wall and take your pet, okay? That has worked extremely well. Okay, so rather than rely on I'm not saying you guys, I don't want you to haze. For those of you in the audience tonight that can haze, I want you to haze. And once you start, don't stop until that animal leaves, okay? But just remember one thing, there's 2 or 3 situations where you don't haze. 1, don't ever corner that coyote in the backyard and haze it. Absolutely do not do that. 2, if that animal appears to be sick, don't haze it. And you'll know immediately. I mean, they get big blotchy spots. If they've got the mange, they're losing hair all over, and you'll know the animal's sick. And the 3rd situation is if the coyote's got pups. If it's mama and she's got pups, do not haze that animal. Now, back to it again. Using people that have been vetted, people that want to haze, that know how to haze, or willing to haze, it works real well. I trained the Torrance Police Department. They've got bicycle guys, bicycle cops that ride the neighborhoods, you know, looking for crime and everything else. We trained them. We brought them in and trained them on how to haze. These guys do a great job, great job. And they're getting these animals off the street before they take pets. And they're proactive. That's the key. My boss has done anything. He's talked about being proactive. We're trying to help you guys. This is the best we've got to offer from the state's point of view, and so far it's been really successful. And if it's something you're interested in, something Nicole wants to consider, we want to be a part of your educational program. And a big part of that education is wildlife watch, okay? So remember that term, because you'll be hearing about it, and that's my job. That's what I do for the state, okay? Any questions on that? Yes, sir?
Yeah, you said you hazed them and you were basically scaring them to go somewhere else. Where did they go? Some other neighborhood or?
No, they stay in the area. But the key is if you continue to haze and continue to haze and haze them every time you can. Absolutely. You guys remember this. When a coyote is born, coyote's deathly afraid of us. Deathly afraid of us. And it's only after time. Mom, you guys understand, mom breeds in December, January. Those pups are born, the gestation period is 63 days. Okay, so mom, she delivers those pups. And she, oh, by the way, interesting point of information, she'll create 2 or 3 dens. And she'll go into that den to have her pups. If she's disturbed or bothered in any way, shape, or form, she'll move and go to another den. And oh, by the way, if she's had her pups, she'll pick them up one at a time and move them to another den. Okay? Those babies are born April, May, first part of June at the latest. Okay? Young animals. So mom brings them out of after a couple of weeks, she'll bring them out of the den, and they come out a little further every day. Right? Little further. Pretty soon they don't even go back to the den. Why? The weather's too good here in Southern California. These coyotes don't den here. They sleep under decks in backyards. They'll sleep in bent grass. They'll sleep under bushes and hedges. They'll sleep anywhere they want to. Weather's too good here, you guys. So anyway, these animals are born. They go through the summer, mom and the family. And by the way, coyotes are not pack animals. We all call them packs, and that's fine, but they're really not. You know who the pack animal is the wolf. Think about how the wolf hunts. The wolf looks at deer, herd of deer, maybe elk, small elk, whatever, and they'll look for the old or the diseased. They'll find that animal working together. They'll cut it out of the pack, out of the group, and they'll take it. Coyotes don't do that. They don't have to. With the food source here, they're a family. It's mom, dad, and usually a couple of kids. Mom has 4 to 6 pups. Jim said 4 to 7. That's okay. We're in the same park. She'll have, with good water, good food, and shelter, she'll have 4 to 6 or 4 to 7 pups. Some of those won't make it in the first 3 years. They'll either be run over by cars. You guys know who the biggest killer of coyotes is in the city? Automobiles. We pick up more dead coyotes, not us necessarily, but animal services and the likes picks up more dead coyotes off the street. You guys, the other big killer is disease. These are canines. These are dogs. Oh, by the way, you know this animal that we're deathly afraid of? You know what the average weight is? 17 to 24 pounds. 17, that's a medium-sized dog at best. At best. And a lot of people are scared to death of them. I want to reassure you, adults are not on the menu. We are not on the menu. These are curious animals. Quick story about hazing while we're talking about hazing. And I'll give Nicole back the mic. Quick story about hazing. What a coyote will do is when you haze that coyote the first time, that coyote will run 10, 15 steps, turn around, look at you. You know why? It's curious. It wants to see what you're going to do next. So then what you got to do is you got to move up on it. Be aggressive, be mean, move up on it. Haze it again. It'll run another 5, 10, 15 steps, turn around, look at you. Again, want to see what's coming next. They're curious. You know, people tell me all the time, I'm being stalked. I was stalked by a coyote. Coyotes aren't stalking you. They're curious. They are really curious about you. And oh, by the way, if they are stalking, they want your pet. They don't want you. They want your pet. Huh?
They're like part of our family. They will be my daughter, my son.
Absolutely. You know, go ahead.
So those of us that, when the sun goes down, we go out in our backyards that are fenced with our dogs. And let's just hypothetically, because I
Sure. Bless your heart. I want to tell you something. Your animal will tell you when there's danger. And you know something? I tell people all the time, walking their animal on a leash, even if it's 6 feet and it meets West Covina standards, stay off the cell phone. I tell people all the time, stay off. I can't believe how many animals I see being walked and people are doing this on a cell phone. I tell them, stay off the cell. Your animal will tell you when there's danger. Listen to your animal, okay?
So we go out in our backyard and there's a coyote. Like, I take him out at night on a leash.
Sure,
In the backyard.
sure.
Because he's gonna protect me.
Sure.
So what, I mean, I just back him in and.
Do me a favor, pick your animal up. You can't lift him?
He's 30 pounds.
Yeah. Do me a favor, pull him as hard as you can and get back in the house. And you know, don't haze the coyote. It'll go away. It'll go away. You guys listen to me. The coyotes are in your backyard every night. They know how many pets you have. They know when you take them out to pee them. They know how often you feed them. These animals are extremely intelligent and very athletic. Very athletic. They can jump a 6-foot fence like that, standing still. They are extremely, and depending upon how hungry they are, will dictate what extreme they will go to take your pet. Now, I want to tell you something. Here's the motivation of the coyote. If you take nothing else away, remember this. The coyote wants the greatest opportunity for a success, meaning get a meal with the least amount of energy expended and the least amount of risk to its personal safety. Why? Because it knows there is no hospital in animal kingdom for the coyote. If the coyote gets hurt, he can't hunt. If he can't hunt, he can't eat. If he can't eat, he dies. And he knows that. A coyote would much rather dig under a fence to get in your backyard than go over a fence. But I'm telling you, he'll go over a fence if he has to get something to eat. Coyotes will eat insects if they're hungry enough. They're scavengers, you guys. Well, I can tell you this, they'll go over a 6-foot fence like that, and I'm sure they can go over an 8. I'm sure they can, you know, and like I say, they'll dig under it if they have to get what they need to get. Sure. You guys listen to me, anything under 20 pounds is coyote prime, ideally 10. If you've got an animal that's in that range, for God's sake, please do me a favor. And I'm sorry it's an imposition on you, but manage that just like you would your kid. Exactly. Take care of them just like you would. If you don't, you're going to lose them. Jimmy made a point, and people don't want to hear it, but the truth is, if you leave that animal unattended, if you leave it off leash, you're putting that animal in the food chain. And it's not a matter of, is the coyote going to get your pet? It's a matter of when. Okay, and that's a terrible thing to say, but it's true. It's so true, and I don't want any of you to lose your animal. I know how important they are. My dog, God, I'd die if coyote got my dog. So anyway, questions? Something else? Wildlife Watch is a good thing, you guys, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk a little bit more to Nicole about how we can fit in and the role we can play in helping with education. Education's the key. Let me leave you one last thought. Reporting. You guys do me a favor. Talk to your neighbors in your neighborhood. Make sure they are reporting everything they see. Everything. The city cannot fix a problem it doesn't know about. And if you don't help the city get this thing under control, you guys, nothing's going to change. And the way you start to help the city do this is tell them what you're seeing and get your neighbors to tell them what you're seeing. Reporting is critical, and I got to tell you, it is one of the biggest problems we have, besides feeders, is getting people to report what they're seeing. Yes, sir?
So we should report to the city manager when we have a hot spot that we know where they're breeding.
Absolutely. Be sure and let her know. Absolutely. You bet. Darn right. If you've got an area that you're pretty sure they're in, let us know. Oh, absolutely. Like I say, you guys, the city can't fix what it doesn't know about. I mean, and you can't hold them responsible for that. You got to help them. You Got to help us. Now, state's policy,
One comment. I worked in a community college. We couldn't get employees to stop feeding stray cats. It was really down to not people quit feeding the stray cats. I have a friend who's 90 years old, and coyotes are in her backyard, and she's feeding cats and we're telling her not to do this.
So the way we handle that is we contact somebody in the family. The family needs to be made aware. Correct. And if they continue to feed and it is a public nuisance, then you have to go to the next step. You don't want to have to do that. The next step would be possibly filing a complaint. No one wants to do that because they're not anyone in their role.
And it's not in West Covina, she's actually in the community part of the
But the reality of it is, let's get it straight, it's a public nuisance, right? Everybody agree? Yes. Right. So that's where Dave and Wildlife Watch comes in. You have to look out for people in your neighborhood. They may not get it.
I keep thinking of this one cat. She feeds, that's the thing, don't go away, but that's cold, I know.
you guys, feeding is the biggest problem I face. I mean, I could go fishing every day instead of doing this. If people would quit feeding, it's really a huge, huge problem. And it's, like I said, it's not going to get better until we get this thing organized. You guys help us get the job done.
So thank you to Fish and Wildlife for coming out tonight, and thank you to Mr. Hartman from the county. And I did want to just follow up with what they had mentioned about reporting. It is important that you report, and what we had just talked about, one of the hot spots that's happening in northwest Covina is also a byproduct of what's happening in Covina. So if you are aware of a neighbor in close proximity that is feeding cats, I can tell you there is the food source, right? So because the calls started in Covina and then they started to come into West Covina more recently. Thank you all for coming out tonight. As mentioned, I will follow up with some of you in the audience with my card and contact information, and have a nice night. Thank you.